Hello, I am Craig Nice with Red E. We're in West Bend, Iowa today doing a hydraulic drive conversion install on a John Deere 1900 430 bushel air cart. Make sure your plate says Red E the proper way and you don't put the motor on backwards. I'll set this off to the side. I'll get all three assembled and then I'll tighten all three at one time. Now that we have the motors attached to the plates, and you can clearly see the Red E label on the top in the right direction, I'm going to install the PWM valves on top. Just installing the PWM valve in the block. And I'm going to tighten it now before I forget. Next we will apply thread sealant to a plug that goes in the bottom of the PWM valve block. Now we're going to install the top of the PWM valve. Just unspin the nut, pull the O-ring off, slip the solenoid down, O-ring back on, and install the nut. This can rotate around. We'll get that set later when we mount it on the plate. Now that we have our PWM valves assembled, I'm going to install them with provided hardware on the plate. Now we're going to install a 45-degree hydraulic fitting into the front port of the PWM valve. Make sure the fitting points down towards the motor. There's two different sizes of hydraulic fittings. You have the bigger one goes in the hydraulic motor, smaller one goes on the PWM valve. Now we're going to install the larger 45-degree hydraulic fitting in the front port of the hydraulic motor. We have to remove the front port plug first. Now we're going to install the short hydraulic hose. It connects to the PWM valve. And then a hydraulic motor. And you can tighten this hose at this time. The last bit of assembly for the hydraulic drive conversion will be installing this plug on the right hand side of the PWM valve. Now with the assembly complete, we will go to the air cart for installation. Now with the hydraulic drive assembly complete, we are going to begin removal of the old manual transmissions. We start with removing the pins off the drive shafts, then the transmissions themselves, then remove the solenoid off the sprag clutch over there on the right hand side, and then the old existing wiring. Now that the old transmissions are removed, we're going to unplug the harnesses. You have your speed sensor, hopper sensor. On a 3-tank machine, there'll be 3 tanks of these, so 3 speed sensors, 3 hoppers, and then 1 fan plug. Now before we begin installation, we're going to install the new shorter drive shafts on the hydraulic motor assemblies that we previously assembled using provided 3/8 bolt. Now we're going to install pre-assembled hydraulic motor assembly onto cart using provided hardware. Okay, now we're going to complete our installation by installing the hydraulic hoses, starting with the fittings. This happens to be a tow behind cart, so it gets a 90-degree fitting on the front motor. If it was a tow between, it'd get a T. Make sure the fitting points towards the back of the cart. The top gets a PW on the PWM gets a T. Then we're on a 3-tank machine, so we're gonna just keep working our way back. Middle tank gets a T on the motor. And a T on the PWM. And because we have a tow between, or a tow behind tank, the back motor will get a T because this back fitting will continue on to the fan. That's the return side. And the top, the PWM, will get a 45 or a 90. This case happens to be a 45. Now we're ready for the hoses. Now with the hydraulic fittings installed, we are going to start installing our hoses. We're going to start at this hose at the front of the PWM valve. It's a longer hose and it runs up to the diverter valve for the fan. So install this and tighten it. And then we're going to take one of the shorter hoses, install at the back side of the PWM, and tighten it. And the other side of that hose gets installed on the front side of the next PWM. Then we take another short hose, install on the back side of the PWM. Grab the other end of that hose and install it on the back PWM on the 45. And that runs to the fan. Now if you have a tow between tank, this will be a 90, but on a tow behind it's a T. Okay, back here on the hydraulic motor for the fan, we install this T, and then this hose originates at the hydraulic motor on the rear tank. It's the return line. So now we're just going to tighten up. So now we're going to install this fitting right behind the hydraulic flow decal here. That's where diverter is for your auger, and that supplies your oil for your new hydraulic motors that we just installed. So bust this fitting loose. Now that we've finished connecting our hydraulic hoses, we're going to do the electrical install. I already have strung out the wiring harness here. It comes all coiled up. It's the best to lay it all out. I'm going to start on the first tank, and there's 3 different connectors on each tank. This one is APR1. APR is your speed sensor. That'd be the sensor that's down in the meter housing by the cartridge that picks up your meter speed. Hooking up the plug at the APR, that's your speed sensor. And then we'll grab one of the other 3 sensors for that tank. This one is the bin level sensor. And they are all labeled. This one says bin 1. That just plugs into the bin level. Then the third type of connector for that tank is the PWM. That's a square looking one here. And I just like looping them through the wires here, following the hydraulic hoses. There is a gasket and screw on the PWM connector, and I will do all those at the same time. So now I'm going to follow my harness back. This time I'm going to try to grab all 3. And last but not least, the fan switch, or fan sensor. There are 2 more plugs at the front of the harness here. One is for the switch box, and one is for your implement lift switch. Okay, we're at the back of the air cart now, and just stringing out the fan speed sensor wire. And it plugs right in here to the fan. And now that the wiring harness is installed, it can be zip tied up. The PWMs come with this rubber gasket. Slip that over. And then wiggle it on there. And then insert the screw in the back. And tighten it up. And then I'm just going to rotate the PWM so it doesn't get hit. Then I'll just repeat that process down the line. The Sprague clutch needs to have this lever lifted or removed for the hydraulic drive kit. Then we install the switch box here. And this will allow you to run your meters from the ground here. And then in front of that, we have the rate controller installed. And this is our kind of preferred location to install the John Deere drive rate controller. And now with that, we have completed installing the ready hydraulic drive conversion kit.